The King of Podcasts Radio Network proudly presents the Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Welcome to episode 611 of the Wrestling is Real podcast, where tonight we're going to talk about WWE's chronic copy and paste circle jerk of their core fan base. So we know it has been now a month removed from WrestleMania, 4 weeks ago. Feels like a distant memory at this point, the way you look at things, because now we're coming up to WrestleMania Backlash next week. It'll be 5 weeks removed from WrestleMania, and whatever kind of momentum, whatever kind of hype, whatever kind of buzz, whatever kind of spotlights and pushes that this company had on certain stars, they're diminished greatly. Whatever work was done has been wasted. I mean, they can always get a star rubbed back up to get them more important. This company is capable of doing that, but they're not, for the most part. When I look at all the buzz that's going on with programming that is not the main TV product, the current TV product today, and you're looking at conversations about the A&E documentaries right now, you're having conversations about all the WWE Network now on Peacock being moved over. When I look on TikTok on a regular basis, and I look at every wrestling TikToker reliving the days, playing the same promos over and over and over. If I need to see the Dudley Boys do one more, crotch shot, if I have to go and see The Rock going after Triple H, if I have to see another invasion portion of the angle, if I need Stephanie getting shot down by The Rock, if I need Hulk Hogan going after The Rock, anything Rock, Stone Cold, Ric Flair, pick it. Regaling over the old days, over 15, 20 years ago. How about Taz's debut? How about all the other? Let's go ahead and do what the sports radio people do. Let's do who's the GOAT, the greatest of all time. Who's this and that? Your top three this and that. Who's your pick for, who needs to get a push? Who's your pick for this and that? All this fantasy booking. All this fantasy of living back the legacy. I can't do that. I mean, wrestling is something that's ongoing. It's evolving. It should be changing. We should not be reliving the past because the present isn't any good. But that's where things are. And that's not that way on the other wrestling shows. It's just not. Okay, I'm looking at AEW tonight in Dynamite. They give us blood and guts. Hell of a story they tell us tonight. And MJF and the Pinnacle win in a surrender fashion where Chris Jericho was being about to be sacrificed off the top of the cage. And even though MJF got the Inner Circle to go ahead and surrender to save Chris Jericho, MJF, like the asshole prick he is, threw him off the cage anyway. So to build that storyline even more, pretty damn good. We don't know when Chris Jericho's returning, but that story means something. Hikaru Shida against Britt Baker at Double or Nothing, that actually means something. When you look at the instant push they got to Orange Cassidy all of a sudden, when I'm not even sure what was going to happen with him because of the way that they positioned him after Chris Jericho got his win in the Mimosa Mayhem match, and when Orange Cassidy also had a crack at the TNT title. But his ranking and the ranking system that this company, AEW, where wins and losses matter, has been actually consistent about. And the rankings are how they're determining a number one contender. But the way they did it, and the way that Kenny Omega, it wasn't even so much what he said beforehand. It was that after the announcement by Tony Schiavone that Orange Cassidy's taking on Pac for the AEW World Heavyweight title, whoever wins that match next week. Okay, that right there is interesting. And that's the winner who goes to Double or Nothing to go out to the AEW title. So it's the major pay-per-view. And Orange Cassidy is one win away from the world title. He's been there before. But now, the way that Kenny Omega just ripped and just cajoled and just bullied Orange Cassidy tonight. I love to see Pac and Kenny Omega again. We could do another dance with those two. But, yeah, give me Orange Cassidy and Kenny Omega. That actually is a pretty interesting feud. And they made it so that Orange Cassidy, again, it didn't take much time for him to go ahead and be brought back up and be brought into an interest. And no one's going to be disappointed, I think, if Orange Cassidy won next week. He's been positioned. He's not a joke. He's had some wins. He's had some matches where he's done some. I'm sorry, and most of Mayhem, Orange Cassidy won, right? But now they can immediately bring him back up because there's enough storyline and enough credence to him to make it feel like that we can get him back out there, and he'll feel like there's a good chance that he could win. There's a probability. And no one thinks this is like where you see Sheamus and Humberto Carrillo facing each other, and Humberto Carrillo has no chance in hell of winning. Or Mansoor has no chance in hell of winning. So you look at that right there again. Because stars in AEW, whether you like them or not, whether you are a WWE core fan, a purist, okay, you're in the bubble, and you have to crap on anything that's AEW, no matter if you actually give it any credence or any kind of attention at all. Because some podcasters out there, some people just won't. They will never give AEW the time of day. They will look at them as the latchkey kids, as the redheaded stepchild of wrestling. Okay? They'll look at it as a slap in the face because these guys are going against the granddaddy Vince McMahon and betraying Vince McMahon. Well, why didn't they take Vince's money? Why didn't they work for him? Why didn't you just go and work for him? That's where you need to be. You need to be working for them, and you need to get your spot, and you need to be champion there. Well, maybe they can't be champion there. Did anybody think about that? That the fact that we want a competition, that we want a different organization out there to try to build themselves up to the level to where WWE might actually have to give them notice? Yeah, why not? Because that's the way you fix the problem. This chronic copy and paste circle jerk of their core fan base only gets fixed if competition comes into play. The corporate types don't like competition. They don't want to be competing against another brand, going up after a legacy that they built for 50 years. Okay, I'm sure Vince McMahon has put in the minds of Nick Khan and the rest of the organization that has been brought in, all the CEA types have been brought in thanks to Nick Khan. I'm sure he's got in his mind from Vince, hey, I built this thing, damn it. You don't let anybody else come in and penetrate our position here. You don't let anybody else come on in and take our spot. We're not getting another WCW again. We don't want to do that again. So I'm sure he doesn't want competition, Vince. But this is happening. It's going to happen whether you like it or not. It's a matter of not if, but when. And I really feel like with the way things are going right now, I am not afraid of saying this, and everybody else can go ahead and bash me for this bold prediction, but I think by the end of the AEW contract on television, 2023, they're going to be able to get the ratings that Raw gets. And they'll be closing in on what SmackDown gets. I really feel that. This Blood and Guts show tonight has to pull over 1 million viewers. Now, I really do believe that the Biden speech last week might have taken a dent because it did take a dent on anything else that was out there on cable or network. If this doesn't, then there's a big problem. And AEW has to figure out what that has to be. I don't think they're going to have that problem. If I had to be a betting man, I'd say they would be 1.1, 1.2 million viewers overnight for this show. I don't see what else there was that would have caused any friction or any kind of erosion of ratings erosion of audience. I don't know. So, WWE, they can't get this creative problem figured by themselves. Or they choose not to, because there is a conflict among the legacy that's been there for a long time. The wrestling narrative, the wrestling bookers, the agents, the people that are in the wrestling business, in conflict with those that have been in the corporate space that, no, listen, we need to put out good programming, good television. And then there's the idea of, no, we need to put out sports entertainment and a wrestling style. The style that we've been doing that everybody knows us for. Well, people are getting a little tired of what they're known for because of the bad habits that this company has. And it's because of the bad habits they had because they were brought on by the Attitude Era. For all the accolades we give for the Attitude Era, what we do know is that there were some disadvantages for what they did. The instant matches after a confrontation. Let's just let them fight. Let's not wait a week. Let's not wait 2 weeks. Let's not wait for the pay-per-view. Let's make a match happen. And if we want to make it from a singles match to a tag team match, let's do that. Instant gratification. That was one of the hallmarks of the Attitude Era. It was gratifying this audience. And some of the same mistakes or some of the same plays in the playbook are being called again. Case in point, one of the things that people got upset about this week, which just doesn't matter, but this is what people have to worry about with themselves. Yes, Eva Marie's coming back. 36 years old, looks amazing. You know, I mean, she's still a young girl, but she hasn't aged at all. It's been, 7-8 years since we last saw her. And she's back, and she looks amazing. And I remember seeing that she was starting to go ahead and get some kind of a run on her. The momentum was coming on her side. She was starting to get over as a heel, and it was getting pretty good. Maybe she could keep that up. But then also we know that she was a cancer when it came to the ring and all the issues that she brought on, getting in trouble, and some of the backstage stuff that was being brought on because of her. So there's no answer as to why she's coming back after all this time. When nobody expected it. But then, for all the crap on the Iconics, after all these years, and now you defend them. Oh, so how many times did I have to read this on Twitter? Oh, so Eva Marie comes in and the Iconics are the ones that are let go? Yeah, I get your point. That's pretty obvious. Twitterati, IWC, podcasters, my brethren in arms. I get it. But this is not an argument. There is nothing of value that says, and I'm not putting any of these women down. I'm saying, in the eyes of WWE, do you really think that anything's going to really happen with Eva Marie or the Iconics or either or? Do they really shake up the equilibrium of what this company is about? Are we going to see the next Becky Lynch here? Does anybody think that? Well, that's the point. Everybody's so concerned about that we're going to go back to divas again. Well, yeah. Looks like we are. Now, not all the stars. I mean, Bianca Belair and Rhea Ripley are definitely not cut of the cloth of divas. It's not to say that Rhea Ripley or Bianca Belair could not be as visually appealing as they are, but they're different physical specimens. They're definitely in a different athletic look. I mean, Rhea Ripley at one point, she was such a glamorous woman in her early stage of her wrestling career that, of course, she could have been a diva, but she's not. And now I'm seeing my fellow podcast brethren starting to sour over Rhea Ripley because they're not happy with what she's doing, because it feels like somebody actually said out there oppose her. I didn't want to say it. Somebody else said it, and they're right. There's nothing authentic or unique with Rhea Ripley's character. That's the fault of the company. And I don't know if that's also the fault of what they're trying to do with her or what they're letting her do with her character. But it feels like this is a bit of a, I don't want to say it's like the man gimmick, but it kind of feels that way. It feels like there's a void being filled by Becky Lynch leaves behind. And it would be kind of funny if Rhea Ripley was kind of playing off that role, and if Becky Lynch were to in fact return as what was once reported, Becky Lynch or Rhea Ripley going after that Raw Women's title would be actually really interesting, because then Becky Lynch coming back for her belt, and then she would go ahead and go after Rhea Ripley, who is basically been taking her spot, acting like the man. Like, I wouldn't even want to hear Rhea Ripley call herself the man to force the feud. What an interesting concept. And you get a younger star doing this. That sounds like a plan. But they're more concerned about letting Charlotte Flair get back out there. And I don't even know what she is anymore. Charlotte Flair doesn't feel... There was a different story. I understand, don't be Rick. But there's nothing that much flair about her. The Queen thing doesn't do much for me, and the way they book her doesn't help much either. I feel like there's a bit lacking of the heel character now. It doesn't have the same punch. And that's a testament to the opponents that she has. And the feud's watered down because it's a triple threat. Now you got a triple threat match at WrestleMania Backlash and a triple threat match on the men's side for the WWE Championship. We're just trying to put all these stars together because there's just nothing else we can do. Backlash means we need to go ahead and back in somebody else that we need to be pushing as well. And not just give people the same match, which can't be said about what they actually do on a regular basis on their shows. Vince Russo last week, I said it, copy and paste is absolutely right. And one of the things that was said tonight, or right before the Dynamite broadcast, Tony Khan made some comments. He's not wrong, but everybody's going to be upset with him because of some comments he made that are going to get people all pissed off. Now, so Tony Khan was promoting Blood and Guts for tonight. And one of the reporters he talked to was entrepreneurs Kenny Herzog, entrepreneur.com. And they talked about Raw and SmackDown booking that would resonate with a lot of fans, even if it frustrates people who wish the entire industry would stop fanning the flames of a wrestling war. So Kenny Herzog asks the question, you mentioned serving the fans. Your ultimate competition, WWE, gets some criticism for being disingenuous that its product exists to serve its fans. How do you convince your audience that those claims about AEW are genuine? And Tony Khan says, there's a lot of differences. I don't really do cheap disqualification finishes to prolong something. There are other wrestling programs where you might see multiple DQs and countouts in a week. I believe in giving fans a finish of the match. I believe in not false advertising programs and people. I might hype something I really believe in, but there's a big difference between hyping something and false advertising outright. And I've never done the latter. And I think that's why we have a lot of goodwill with the audience. Following through on the things that you say you're going to do and try to deliver a show that is in the spirit of what the fans want to see week in, week out, and offering fresh matches and fresh programs is a big part of it. Not doing the same matches 17 weeks in a row over and over again. It wasn't a direct shot. It was indirect. But there's only one company that could talk about that with. You could talk about the DQ finishes with Impact Wrestling. You could give them that. But WWE is the biggest culprit. They're the people you can accuse the most of. The most guilty. Now, there's more that's being said in this story from Cage Side Seats than I got to. There's more to the article here that Tony Khan was featured in. I want to bring some of that up. Pretty extensive, by the way. Now, he was asked the question, if the idea behind AEW was to disrupt pro wrestling, how do you think the company's doing on that score more than 2 years on, especially accounting for the pandemic as its own disruption? And he says that most of the Dynamite episodes have happened during the pandemic, and I think it's a function of timing. I'm really glad I got Dynamite started before the pandemic, or it would have been impossible to launch. But also, we launched far enough in front of the pandemic, we were able to get a big money TV extension before the pandemic struck. All the major media conglomerates took a big hit. So I'm not sure we would have gotten that 9-figure TV contract in the post-pandemic markets. The timing was very good for us. Moving along. Opening the forbidden door by sharing talent and storylines with competing promotions. This goes across the board. Next week, Yuji Nagata is going to go after the IWGP US title against Jon Moxley, and it's going to be done on AEW Dynamite. Kenny Omega has been making appearances on Impact Wrestling. And Impact Wrestling, to its credit, they are doing a tournament right now to determine the number one contender who will take on Kenny Omega at Under Siege, their next pay-per-view, the next monthly pay-per-view, which is very interesting. So they're doing a thing about that, which is good. And you see there's quite a bit, not a whole lot of, more than just subtle showing of the Impact and TNA World Heavyweight titles being put on Michael Nakazawa's waist, as opposed to Kenny Omega, who's only wearing the AEW World title. A lot of symbolism with all that right there. So he's talking about now 20 years full circle, things that come back full circle. Now you're seeing wrestlers in New Japan and AAA competing again on TNT. IWGP titles defended on TNT. I think it's a natural balance of the universe just coming back. And he talks about how he wants to make sure we're getting taken care of, and obviously the promoter we're working with is going to have stuff they need to make sure they're getting taken care of, and I'm pretty reasonable. I don't want to screw it up for anybody. So whether it's Conan at AAA or dealing with the New Japan office or talking to Scott D'Amore in Impact, I generally just go into it like I'm dealing with another party in sports. If you're making a trade or something, you just try to work it out and be a good person and a fair partner in negotiation. He also talks about analytics. So much like what Eric Bischoff, that looked at a lot of research. That Tony Khan talks about, he looks at the numbers minute by minute, quarter hours very closely. Since there's not a head-to-head competition on Wednesdays anymore, the patterns have changed a bit. So we're learning things based on the data that has been coming in the past few weeks. But since we began, I've studied these trends really closely, and it can be a good indication of what's getting hot, what's getting a good response. Conversely, I don't want to knee-jerk react if something doesn't get the biggest number right away. It doesn't mean that it won't turn around and draw. So he talks about Darby Allin and trying to emphasize that he's an important person for AEW because he's a creative artist who puts together short forms and artwork for his matches. The kind of thing I can never come up with in a million years. That's why I love collaborating with him, because he really comes in with really awesome ideas nobody else would think of that are in his own voice. Darby wasn't the biggest draw right away, but we've kept building and building with him. And now he's not just a future star with us, he's a big star now. That was a result mostly of his hard work and great presence and the great thought he puts into his character and the way I booked him, which is very strong. When you put that all together, now we've got a star who's consistently drawing ratings for us and is a big part of the show. A lot of the good examples as well, we got Britt Baker turning into a real star for us, putting tons of time in developing her to the next level. So I think it's a good mix of people we're building for the future and then stars that the audience recognizes from watching wrestling for years. And that is what they're doing. That is exactly where this company has come from. AEW is building for the future. They're building for the chance to go ahead and be proper competition to WWE. Meanwhile, WWE is stuck in a purgatory right now. A copy and paste purgatory. They can't write themselves out of a paper bag, let alone a storyline that will finish with a good ending. They struggle. so badly. And they feel compelled to take some of their other older stars that have been around for a long time and keep using them after being used over and over and exhausted, which is what they do a lot of. They exhaust a lot of characters with a lot of up and down storylines, good gimmicks, bad gimmicks, changes all the time, ever evolving. How many times have we seen Sheamus or Shelton Benjamin or Braun Strowman or Bray Wyatt? I mean, how many times do we need to see stars get some kind of a tweak, a change, something? That happens so much. And some of the stars, they give a push and they then don't. Elias feels like nothing now. There's just so many people that feel like they've been exhausted and they just feel, we feel dejected by them. And that is the fault of the company. Because if for some reason there will be some stars that will leave and go somewhere else and they will do better. Now, there isn't anyone as of yet that has really stood out of the stars that have come over from WWE after they became free agents into AEW or Impact or anywhere else that have really stood out. It's not really happened yet. I mean, I'm trying to think of who there has been. I don't feel Christian Cage has gotten there. I don't feel like Miro's there. Now, we don't know what Miro's going to do with Darby Allin next week. Pac has been booked well, but then he was off TV for a long time. Really, the stars that feel like they've really made a big difference. I mean, Jon Moxley was already a big star anyway, so he translated back to a character he's much more familiar with, much more comfortable with. But there are things that are going on here where they're not able to figure this out. And the other thing, too, is that with WWE, they're also kind of stuck in a way where they have to have pay-per-views the way they are. They have to have matches the way they are. They have to have stipulations the way they are. They really don't change much. And then I thought about it, the fact that how many different types of matches have we had that have been creative and different, and you could tell it was the wrestler's input. From Mimosa Mayhem, the Cracker Barrel Clash, the Godzilla vs. Kong themed match, the arcade match, the Spring Stampede. They've done a lot of and Blood and Guts. They've done a lot of different things, a lot of different variations of everything. They don't do things the same old like everybody else does. The parlay was different. Some of the press conference stuff has been different. Some of the contract signings have been different. I mean, they've done quite a few things that were different. Now, the exploding barbed wire match, which I'm sorry if I bring that up, but the last exploding didn't explode. Yeah, I got it. But the exploding barbed wire match, which got a lot of people listening to that episode when I put that up here as the title. Just saying. And then Tony Khan also talked about the own missteps that the company's done and how they've bounced back. And this is very important because you got to ask yourself, will Triple H or Vince McMahon admit mistakes? Will they be a little bit humble? Will they take a slice of humble pie and at least admit, you know what, we need to make some changes? That's the infamous "we want to be for the fans" speech with the whole entire McMahon family. It's the last time they actually kind of admitted they were kind of screwing up. And nothing since. Now, Tony Khan mentions 3 things. The third one's not a failure. It's just about trying to get the best out of a bad situation. So the head-to-head battle on Wednesday nights. And this went until very recently. It was clear at the time we were just weren't giving our fans what they wanted. We started with this great audience. There were a lot of people with good ideas, but there were too many people. Too many ideas, and there was just too much. It was overwhelming. I promised myself I was going to work harder and come up with my own ideas. I would still solicit outside suggestions, but I was only going to do stuff I really believed in, and I was going to be meticulous. I believe that made a big difference that we came back much more focused, much more organized, and with a great response to our next several shows. From the end of 2019 to the beginning of 2020, the numbers turned around. I was really proud of that. And there was a change. And, yeah, they were kind of trying to find their footing. So that initial part of AEW's infancy, yeah, the pay-per-views were very good. The TV, they were trying to get themselves figured out. The production was a little bit underwhelming. It was not perfect, but they got it figured out. Now the production's very good. Keith Mitchell and that whole field of TBS TNT type of wrestling that we had back in the day, like the field of Nitro, is back. But it's actually really well done. Then they talked about the pandemic and then having our full roster to having less than 30% of them available. Every week was a dogfight. For the tapings, I felt like we really had to keep the momentum going, but also so that we fulfilled our obligations to our TV partner by producing these shows. The last thing I would ever want to do in this situation with everybody's livelihood is at risk breach the TV contract. It's our lifeblood revenue stream. Remember that. AEW, they have everything to lose. Now, Tony Khan can go and continue to go ahead and keep pumping money into it if the TV deal went away, but they need the TNT deal. They need the deal they got with Bleacher Report to keep putting their pay-per-views out. They need this to happen. What does WWE need to go ahead and have happen? They have nothing to lose. We were worried about them 2 years ago, prior to the SmackDown on Fox deal and the renewed deal for Raw. Remember when I talked about that? And then they figured it out. Nick Khan was the savior. And then it happened. And then everything came about. Amazing. And this company, it didn't matter if they lost Saudi Arabia for the last year and a half. It didn't matter if they didn't have the live shows. Everything worked out for them in spades. It's worked out better than they could even expect. Why would WWE be motivated to go ahead and make changes? If it's not broken, don't fix it. It is broken. And it has been somewhat broken for over a decade. And since the momentum of the Wyatt family versus the Shield, there hasn't been much else. It's just been quiet. And the kind of momentum that this company had, they're not pulling out anything special with factions. They had the Hurt Business. How much of a dent did it really make? For me, I still think the Hurt Business did its role as a stable where Lashley was on top with MVP and the breakup happened. No problem with that there. I know a lot of people feel indifferent about that. But that wasn't a faction that, compared to me, of the very initial Nexus with either CM Punk or the original Nexus that took out John Cena. It wasn't anything similar to me to be resembling Evolution. It's not a Four Horsemen. It's none of that. It was a good faction. But there wasn't anybody that really had that was a good opponent for them that really would have built that faction together. Retribution was a bust. A horrible idea. An actual attempt after the cinematic matches and all the stuff going on in the pandemic. Retribution was a fostered idea out of watching current news on television. The riots. And then they started backtracking on the original idea of Retribution. And it became mute, milquetoast, and horrible. And it died a slow death. Mustafa Ali has not been on TV since. Is there anything in the last 3-4 years that we've had? We could complain about gimmicks that were so good that just fell apart. Bray Wyatt evolutionizing himself to get beaten down again. How many times does that character have to change? And then you take the ghoulishness of the character. Now you put on Alexa Bliss. Just like that. But there's no sense of a sense of concern, sense of fear, or anxiety, or pressure. There's no pressure at all with this company. The only pressure that could really come in to make changes is if Nick Khan is able to earn enough points within that company to make the change at the core, at the nucleus where all this happens, where the bread is made. If he can make significant changes in there, like there's been some changes going on now if Mark Carrano's out of there. And who knows if there's anybody else that's been changed around, some of the changes in positions they've had over there as well. We don't know what's happening over there. But if the company's doing something right, Nick Khan's thinking for the future. He has to say, we have to change something here. We haven't heard anything new about a new lead creative writer. We haven't heard anything about, we've heard the talent relations change. SmackDown's basically doing just enough to satiate and satisfy the Fox people. That's pretty much it. The bare minimum is what this company's doing right now. When I read Tony Khan's words, keeping the stories alive, finding fresh ways to do it, putting over a month's worth of shows together in 15 minutes, making the most out of what you have, even if your resources are limited, and sometimes it'll be your best work. Right. This company is having to do things on the fly, and they're working with limited resources, and they're doing great. But nobody gives AEW credit for that. With WWE, they have unlimited resources. They have unlimited tap talent. There are no excuses. We don't need to give this company any excuses. What we want WWE to be able to do is be able to go ahead and lift themselves up out of this purgatory that they've put themselves in. It's been bad for a long time. There's a number of bright spots. WrestleMania every year, we get a couple of spotlights. We get a couple of some positioning of talent that gives us some hope that says, hey, something might happen here. Damian Priest, what's happened with him? Bobby Lashley, hey, he's still holding on to the title, right? Braun Strowman, they put us focus on him. Okay, they're doing that part. What about Rhea Ripley? Omos, okay. Another dominating match on a tag team match. Rematch for the Raw tag team titles. Okay. And then I guess RK Bro, Matt Riddle, is being looked at now. And that's a tag team we have that could be looking on down the line to go after AJ Styles and Omos. Great. It's something to do. Bianca Belair still holding on to the SmackDown Women's title. Great. Big E, after losing the Intercontinental title, I haven't seen much with him as of yet that really stands out for me. Well, especially you got Apollo Crews and his new soldier. I don't feel much difference with Apollo Crews winning the belt and the way that things are positioned there. And then what else? Nia Jax, Shayna Baszler. Another rematch. Another match. So what? The things that got us excited and got us motivated and got us interested, because WrestleMania is the event that it is, and taking advantage of that is not being taken advantage of. A lot of those opportunities have been squandered. When you look at what WrestleMania Backlash is going to look like coming up next week, Bobby Lashley, Drew McIntyre, Braun Strowman, Triple Threat, WWE Championship, Bianca Belair versus Bayley, SmackDown Women's title. Okay. And that feud has been built up fine. No complaints there. Rhea Ripley versus Asuka versus Charlotte Flair for the Raw Women's title. After that, we know Alexa Bliss has moved along, and now she has Lily, and Lily has her sights on something, so they've been building that up a little bit. But what else has this company really done that has stood out, that makes us intrigued and interested in what's going on, that creates a buzz with everybody out there to talk about what's going on their product? What's being said? Does anybody know? I guess not. The Sportster actually put up a story about AEW learning from its booking mistakes. And they asked, why doesn't WWE? What an interesting story. So, one of the examples of this article talks about is Dark Order debuting in AEW back in 2019. Fans meant to take them seriously as a mysterious and intimidating cult. There was an obvious disconnect with how the group was being presented on an aesthetic level. Squash as many jobbers as you want, but few fans are going to take you seriously when your main attraction is a 230-pound man in a gimp mask. But the Dark Order got to be evolved into more of a comedic act. Then Brody Lee was revealed the Exalted One, began to play their strengths. The members did, lean into the gimmick's goofiness. And the disconnect between the group was initially being presented, how it was being perceived by fans was palpable. But rather continue to beat a dead horse, they went into course correction mode, and the results have been better. The creative malleability, the Dark Order is now one of the more consistently entertaining acts in the business. And it's not the only example of the company realizing that something isn't working and shaking up things accordingly. Britt Baker is a babyface, then turned heel. And then fans reacting negatively to Brandy's Nightmare Collective, they pulled the plug on it. So AEW has been able to give the fans what they want and the ratings have been rewarded to them. And then they ask, WWE is perfectly capable of creating moments that are memorable for all the right reasons. Bianca Belair's recent WrestleMania victory, Roman Reigns' current monster heel run, and also Roman Reigns beating Daniel Bryan. We have to talk about Daniel Bryan and his contract expiring. We'll talk about that in a minute. But that also makes all the too prevalent turgid storytelling we see on Raw every week the more upsetting. So he mentions the Hurt Business, the breakup of Cedric Alexander and Shelton Benjamin, then the Aleister Black vignettes. And there are other examples of the company letting opportunities to course, correct, slip away. On the rare occasion they do decide to nip a bad idea in the bud, the damage has already been done. The Mystery Cage gimmick with Eric Rowan, which was a Paul Heyman idea, but it didn't work. But that was why it went away. Now, the comparisons to what AEW and WWE are doing right now, AEW has been putting on with a live crowd. Not as big, but they have a live crowd. You can feel it. The Thunderdome is impressive, but unreliable to gauge how much or how little fans are enjoying certain segments of the shows. Now, he's talking about, this writer says he thinks that the creative team will get together when they get back on the road. No. I don't think they're going to get back on the road right away anyway. I think they're pretty content with doing this right now. Imagine if they did have to go back out. They would be forced to make changes because they wouldn't be embarrassed. They wouldn't want to be embarrassed. So the writer here says that WWE's roster is absolutely stacked. We want everyone who works there to succeed. WWE is a Disney-esque company that has brought countless hours of joy and excitement. We know they can do better. But now let's go ahead and talk about the real crux of the argument. We know for a fact that WWE is capable of putting out better storylines and capable of building stars. NXT. Since the move to Tuesday nights, getting the chance to watch the show is pretty consistent. It's definitely watchable. It's not bad at all. I think some of the storylines have been kind of interesting. You know, Indy Hartwell and the Dexter Loomis fascination, the Cameron Grimes stuff with Ted DiBiase? Yeah. Finn Balor returning. The Shotzi Blackheart Ember Moon stuff? Yeah. MSK and the Legado del Fantasma? Yeah. There's some good stuff in there. It's been nice. A very refreshing look to go and see NXT on Tuesday nights. Haven't missed it. It's nice to watch. And I actually prefer the way that show's produced because you got a bit of a crowd in there. And the Capitol Wrestling Center is actually a pretty nice, intimate setting. And it has a good feel. Even the Kyle O'Reilly stuff. I think they're doing some new things with them. It's a bit different. Isaiah Swerve Scott, he's got now a new stable. I like that too. I'm not as big in the Bronson Reed as everybody else. I wish LA Knight would be a little bit over more, but, it is what it is. But they have some things better off. The new Chinese star they brought in, Saray or whatever her name is, I'm not big about. Raquel Gonzalez as the NXT Women's Champion, I like. I'm not big about the Toni Storm, Zoe Stark stuff. Not necessarily for me right now. Not big about that. And the Way is something that's kind of a flat faction in my own case as well. I'm not big about the Johnny Gargano Austin Theory stuff. But hey, for the most part, I like it. It's been pretty good. The announce team's fine. Again, watchable show. It's a decent show. It's a better show than Raw. Better 2-hour show, better done than Raw does. Story was brought up about that by Fansided. And Rafael Garcia writes that NXT TakeOver Vengeance Day kind of showed that the brand was moving in the right direction. And Triple H even talked about it in the post-event press call, saying that every match on the card could steal the show. It was that kind of card, and across the board, they didn't disappoint. He felt like it was a takeover that felt like it was back to the beginning and back to the brand. So now we're seeing mid-card feuds like Isaiah Swerve Scott versus Leon Ruff. Women are getting stronger booking than they are on SmackDown or Monday Night Raw. There's one person booked well on the roster, creating intrigue in multiple matches and creating, rather than television hours that can be skipped. And shows being promoted a week in advance, building excitement for what is to come, establishing stories more than a week at a time. We already know that next week, Mercedes Martinez and Raquel Gonzalez will take on each other for the women's title, and the Kushida will defend the North American title against Santos Escobar in a 2 out of 3 falls match. That's good. Really good. That alone is the foundation for another great episode, but the fact that things are being announced rather than hours or minutes is 180 degrees different than the main roster. And then Raphael talks about how could all this be turned around in a moment of shoddy booking? Yes. Just look back to how the women's tag team division was booked when Nia Jax and Shayna Baszler defended against Dakota Kai and Gonzalez. Even that moment has been repaired in sorts with how both Gonzalez and the women's tag team titles have been booked since. But it's not perfect. Still. And the booking around Karrion Kross has not been excellent, but with names like Pete Dunne, Finn Balor, and Kyle O'Reilly as good at the top of the card very quickly. And yeah, I don't like the vulnerability of Karrion Kross. I wish he was more of a monster and more of this intimidating, just destructive machine of a character. But this is what they decided to do with Karrion Kross. I don't know. They want to make him somebody vulnerable. I don't want him that way. I don't want him selling so much. I want him winning, and I want him destroying. That's just my point. And Raphael writes that WWE made the mistake of trying to counter-program All Elite Wrestling and was soundly defeated. Moving NXT to Tuesday was the right direction, giving wrestling fans a starting point to the quality booking that the company has spent many years begging for fans begging to see that. The masses can only hope the early success seen here translates over. No, because we had bad booking before. So NXT finally gets themselves back to where they were. That's a testament to Triple H and the team there, making sure to get things back to where things were that worked, without having to go ahead and worry about the pressure of having to counter-program AEW. And more people are watching it. So it's a win-win. I'm not worried about the fact that the Wednesday Night War happened and NXT was a casualty to it because they survived. The most important thing that happened out of all this is that NXT survived. the worst thing that could have happened is they could have canceled that show on USA. Instead, NXT did good enough to hold on in competition, and now their ratings have gotten better on Tuesday nights, and that can actually stay. And they're going to do just fine. And maybe down the line, NXT could get themselves up to 1 million viewers. They could very well do that. It's a good enough show. It deserves to make 1 million viewers. Triple H running the NXT brand, you can tell when he gets to run the show like he wants to run the show, it feels right. And it can stay like that. But then what's next? How do you get that kind of spirit, that kind of feel over to the main roster when there's so much autonomy, so much control creatively? You can't make the type of changes that you want. You can't get that interaction and feedback from the wrestlers like you do in an AEW or Impact or somewhere else to kind of try to make some changes here. It's not allowed. There has to be a way for WWE to be able to book themselves out of this mess. There's no reason. I mean, the biggest thing we're talking about right now is the fact that you would get the same ratings if you took some of the Attitude Era style things that you did and took them out. I think nothing more pleasing and more useful for this company would be if they could let Kevin Dunn go. The jerky MTV style camera shots. It's not working. The backstage style. The scripted promos. Creating something more organic, more unique, feels less predictable. Natural, relaxed. You spent all this time with so many of these stars in the Performance Center or SCW or Deep South or wherever they came from. And then you suffocate the talent that you made them become. You suffocate the amount of things they're able to do. How do you expect anything to get better from this? Well, that's a big problem. Now, one of the things I got to talk about as well, that's going to concern people, and this is a testament of the company, the fact that Daniel Bryan's contract expired. I'm not going to be about everybody else talking that I need to go ahead and build up Daniel Bryan. Listen, Daniel Bryan, he's on borrowed time. We're grateful that he was able to go ahead and continue wrestling after the neck injury he sustained. Much like Edge, we're grateful for him to be able to go ahead and come back after the injury he sustained, where they both were retiring. With Daniel Bryan, I don't know what the reason is why the contract was expired, and if they didn't feel like there was much that they were getting out of Daniel Bryan trying to go ahead and try to work with younger stars to help build some things up for them, and that Daniel Bryan was just picking certain stars that the company wasn't going to do anything with. And Drew Gulak, that's not a guy they're going to work with. They're going to do anything with at all. So we have the report now, is that the WWE contract either was reportedly expired or was set to expire last week following his Universal Championship match against Roman Reigns on SmackDown. Fightful Select reported that little is known of Bryan's situation aside from the fact the contract was set to expire. He could have signed a new deal or could be working to continue to work with the company without a contract. And there were no leaks regarding Bryan saying any farewells backstage if he was leaving for any good. The 39-year-old Bryan has said some things lately would lead one to believe that he wanted to take some time off before coming back to the company or wrestling elsewhere. He spoke with Keisha Hatch, of TV Line last week. Says his neck was just wrecked during his match against Reigns. And in an interview with BT Sport, he said he felt detached during his match with Roman Reigns and Edge in the main event of WrestleMania 37. With regard to that feeling, Bryan added, quote, maybe it was a sign that it's time to let go of being a full-time wrestler. The odd detachment, I was like, whoa. Like I said, I'm either going to die or maybe it's a sign that this isn't it and isn't the same type of fulfillment that it was before. I've been trying to meditate on it and talk to my friends that I'm close with, like, what is that? My contract goes up relatively soon. I'm still trying to figure out what I'm doing with my life. He's uncertain. I don't expect him to go to AEW or anywhere else. I think his career, he can hang it up. He's done more than enough. There is nothing left for Daniel Bryan to accomplish. The truth is, the legacy has left aside as Bryan Danielson in Ring of Honor, and the legacy he's left aside in WWE. Like his legacy is that he overcame the odds of a company that would normally have certain expectations and a particular style and size and look of a wrestler. And he broke the mold. He is one of the people that came in to get some other stars in the door. Because you can't knock talent like that. With Daniel Bryan coming in, you don't see AJ Styles make his way in. You don't see Ricochet come on in. I don't think you see Apollo Crews come in. I mean, there's a lot that has to be said about what he's been able to do. 4-time WWE champion, 5-time world champion. He's a first ballot Hall of Famer if they decide to do that. And the other thing is, it wasn't he was on the road or anything like that. I mean, Brie to have another baby, right? We know about that from the Total Divas show. And he was able to come on back and work now. He looks like he's been working a limited schedule anyway. And who knows what he was doing right now anyway, with the fact that he was working with a creative team and trying to do some things in the writer's room to try to help offer some support, offer a wrestler's perspective, which we can appreciate. But maybe his information's falling on deaf ears. There's not much that can be done about it. But now, does he want to work somewhere else? Could AEW want to have him? Yeah. Could New Japan want him? Yes. And then some people were talking about, well, what if Daniel Bryan went back to NXT? He could have matches against the likes of Finn Balor, Johnny Gargano, Kyle O'Reilly, Tommaso Ciampa, Timothy Thatcher, Walter, Pete Dunne, and Kushida, among others. I also don't get Imperium. I'm not buying them either. They're good, but they need a manager. They need a real mouthpiece. And I don't know who you have to do that, but I would prefer they had a mouthpiece. I would prefer they had a manager to come in and handle Imperium, to present them instead of them talking themselves. Not that they can't talk. I just feel like we could get somebody there to be a manager. I'm going to leave it there. I appreciate all of you listening to the show, as you always do, checking in. And it's always fun being behind this mic and talking to all of you. Remember to go and follow me wherever you can find yourselves on social media. I've been doing a little more TikTok videos. I got my YouTube channel. Got the website, kingofpodcasts.com. Of course, WrestlingIsReal.com was where this show is hosted. And check out my other podcasts. Broadcasters Podcast, when I'm not podcasting. I do those every week as well. You can check all that for yourselves. And come back. Again, next week, we got another pay-per-view coming on the way with WrestleMania Backlash and Impact Under Siege, which I'm going to see if I can try to catch that the night before. So we'll have 2 shows on that weekend. I'm going to see about watching both. I'll let you know what happens with that. In the meantime, come back for another Wrestling is Real podcast, because wrestling needs us. Thank you for listening to the Wrestling is Real podcast. You can find all previous episodes at WrestlingIsReal.com or subscribe to the show on all major podcast outlets, including Apple, Amazon, Google, Spotify, and iHeartRadio. Follow the King of Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at King of Podcasts. and search King of Podcasts on YouTube, or type youtube.com/JBRASCO951. This has been a presentation of the King of Podcasts Radio Network.